First new country this year, Saudi Arabia. I'm in Riyadh right now. It's a lot of stuff going on in the evenings actually. Maybe it's only on the weekend, but many things only seem to open in the afternoon, not in the morning, which is a new experience.
Riyadh is not extremely expensive, but a lot of other typical nomad cities are less expensive. So to just give you an approximation, Riyadh is about as expensive as Lisbon, whereas Budapest, for example, or Warsaw are significantly less expensive. So definitely you can save money by being somewhere else. In terms of the internet connectivity, Riyadh is really pretty good. It's a very modern city. Saudi Arabia in general is an economic power hub. So of course, the internet speed that you can get with landline connections in co-working spaces, for example, in Riyadh is really good, as well as the mobile speed you can get through the mobile phone networks. A clear downside of Riyadh is that the air quality is really not good. As you might assume, Saudi Arabia is rich in oil, which means that people really love driving their cars because fuel is so inexpensive. And of course, even though the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is investing a lot in modern electromobility and maybe even hydrogen-based mobility in the future, the reality is that almost everybody drives a combustion engine. So you have tons and tons of traffic and tons of exhaust fumes that really make the air quality in Riyadh quite bad.
There's always a lot of traffic here. It seems like the whole day. At least it's what the drivers told me. That it's not just the rush hours. The streets are always full of cars. Although I have to say, I've seen worse cities like this, at least so far. It seems comparatively disciplined to me. I think Istanbul, for example, was worse than Riyadh here. The distances are so far, everybody takes a car. And so the walkability here is really a bit limited. Sometimes it's more walkable like this street, and sometimes it just ends in the middle of nowhere. So you just, have to go through a very, very narrow alley, or just walk next to the cars, literally, like with no pedestrian walk. Yeah, you always have to be on the lookout here for traffic, unless you're yourself in the car and you're being driven by an Uber driver.
One thing that makes visiting and spending some time in Riyadh really easy is that it's a very safe city. Punishments are very intense for many things in Saudi Arabia, so that of course helps people stick to the law. So generally you will be quite safe in Riyadh and also in most other cities in Saudi Arabia.
Hey Ibrahim.
Hello. Welcome to Saudi Arabia.
It's funny actually, everybody says it to me. Everybody's so friendly here. It's like, welcome to Saudi Arabia, how do you like it? How do you enjoy it?
We lost here.
Yeah, and I have Boris Johnson here once again. This is Boris Johnson here.
One thing I really like, and I think that's the best part about Riyadh and also about the rest of Saudi Arabia, is that the Saudis tend to be really, really friendly and helpful. They tend to be really, really nice and welcoming. They will go with you for coffee. They might go with you for dinner. Saudis tend to be really, really open and welcoming towards tourists. Part of the reason why Saudis might be so curious about foreigners basically coming to visit their country, be it tourists or nomads or business visitors, is that Saudi Arabia only opened up to tourism a couple of years ago in 2019. So they didn't really have a lot of people traveling to their country for most of the time, and obviously are curious now.
One interesting thing here to note is the times. It seems like the times are not really binding here. So when a plane supposedly departs, sometimes departs a bit later, and there's not really an announcement, so it's not necessarily delayed, and then it actually departs later, but it's apparently completely normal that planes depart a bit later, which I guess is a good thing if you are delayed. It's really interesting to note. I'm one of the few European-looking people here in the terminal, domestic terminal in Riyadh. So apparently not so many people are traveling from Riyadh inside of Saudi Arabia. At least not the ones who look like me, kind of like a white European. I guess it's a good sign in the sense that I get an
authentic experience of what it is like here in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, so it did take a while, but finally we're boarding now. I didn't miss the flight. I was already panicking a bit why it would take so long and why there were no announcements. Apparently this is how it works here. Sometimes the flight is late, but there's no announcement.
Overall, I think staying in Riyadh for a while can be a really, really interesting cultural experience, especially if you do it for, let's say, a week or so. I wouldn't say that Riyadh is one of the best places as a digital nomad because it does have certain limitations. As I said, it's a bit more on the expensive side, the air quality isn't super good, and it tends to be really, really hot if you're there at the wrong time of the year. But then on the other side, it's really something new, especially if you're from like Europe or North America. You can really learn something new about Middle Eastern culture. It can be a very easy and safe entrance into that. There's a lot of interesting museums, and the Saudis are very welcoming and tend to share all the nice cultural goods. And you can go on a lot of excursions, for example, into the desert or camel riding or whatever you want to do in Saudi Arabia. If you consider going to Saudi Arabia and you're not sure where to go and maybe you want to go only to one place, then I would actually go to Jeddah. Jeddah is, first of all, temperature-wise a bit nicer most of the year. In the winter, it's a bit warmer. People are even a bit more international because, it's at the sea, so it's a slightly more touristic location. There's lots of water sports activities you have in Jeddah. And generally, Jeddah is also easily reachable from various European airports. So I would go to Jeddah or maybe Jeddah first, and then you can still go on to Riyadh and explore more places in Saudi Arabia. If you take a vacation and if you're interested in that culture, then I can definitely recommend to going to a few places in Saudi Arabia because it is a big country. There is a lot to see there. So definitely go and do your research, start with Jeddah, and then head on to the other places in Saudi Arabia. If you like this video and you want to hear more about the perfect locations to spend a week, a month, or maybe even longer in as a digital nomad software developer, then please click like and subscribe, and I will happily deliver more videos like this one to you. And of course, I'm always looking forward to your comments, so please ask me anything you want to know in the comments, and then see you in the next video.